What's interesting is that, you know, the other doctrine that they were working on and is called the United Kingdom. Be be wary of that term, the United Kingdom of the world, because they wanted to establish that so that their grand monarch, as they talk about him in the secret societies, would be the ruler of the world and sitting on the throne in Jerusalem. This is the dragon Messiah. This is the elven bloodline of the Messianic dragon that they've been plotting to put there forever. And anything that is associated with Templarism is the antithesis of Christianity as it's meant to be, and anything that's written in the Bible. And we're told over and over and over and over not to swear oaths, and that you will be held accountable for those oaths. If you swear that oath, then you had better fulfill it, because God will hold you accountable for it. But we're advised not to, over and over and over. And yet, this is based on an oath-based system in the mystical religions, and that all goes back to the oath sworn on Mount Hermon before the flood, and then again after the flood. And it's the oath of the watchers to carry it out to the end, the oath of Harum Anathema. No matter what the consequences, no matter what would happen to them, they were going to create a race to lead humanity into destruction. And that's their purpose. So the purpose of the Templars is to recreate the scenario to destroy humanity, and they do that through creating their worldwide hegemony that we'll understand with the coming end time, and all the different horrors that you see in prophecy, particularly against humans, and particularly in a more spiteful way against anybody who stands against them, like monotheists, Christians. They will express that blood hatred, just as the Amalekites and the giants swore oaths to wipe Israel from the face of the earth, in the time of the age of Israel and its creation, and throughout its history.
That they are using the book of Revelation as a playbook for the other side.
Yeah, and we see that being fulfilled. And when talked about banking, for an example, and the Rothschilds were set up as bankers outside the church after the fall of the Templars. The Templars were the largest banking organization that was ever created to that time, and created all the platforms for modern banking as we understand it today. So they needed to replace it both inside and outside the church. And the Rothschilds were the sponsors of the whole Zionist movement, and the iconology that they use with the Star of David comes in at the same time to put Israel back into the land of the covenant, so that they could bring forward the end time rendezvous with destiny that they want to have. And the Rothschilds were originally named the Bauer family, were funded by the secret societies and the bloodlines to become that banking organizational structure. And so we ought not to look at that Israel being in the land of the covenant isn't the fulfillment of prophecy, because it is, because we know Israel, or the southern kingdom more accurately, is in the covenant land in the time of the Ezekiel war in 38 and 39, and that they're in control of Jerusalem in times of the signing of the 7-year covenant in Daniel 9:27, and permitted to do the sacrifice, and in control of Jerusalem as the epicenter for those first 3.5 years until they flee to the wilderness as talked about in the book of Revelation and in the four gospels. So what we're not told biblically in eschatology is how that remnant shows up for the end time. And
Yeah.
again, this is all happening through free choice. And so this has been made available to bring a scenario for the end time because of the polytheists. They understand end time prophecy as well. They have a different view on the outcome, but they know that they have to have Israel in place if they're going to bring about the end time. And so I think that was their gambit. But that should not, we should not look poorly on that, whether or not all the people are Jewish root or not. What we do need to know is that they need to be in the covenant land and in control of Jerusalem in the end time. And then once they're there, we apply the prophecies that we've been provided throughout the Old and New Testament.
Yeah. I've got a friend who I actually met through I originally met him through YouTube, him watching my YouTube videos and commenting on them, and then we eventually started emailing, and then talking through Facebook Messenger, because it's got the video calls and whatnot. But his family, he's what you would consider a Palestinian Jew. He didn't come from Europe,
Yep. Yep.
but his family has literally been there for 3,000 years. Israel, of course, became a nation in 48, but Jews have, they've been there, throughout history, just not as, I guess, a recognized nation
State.
by
Yep.
the rest
Yep.
of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess, if you look at the Knights Templar, they were the most powerful military organization at that time. And this organization moves back to Europe and it changes the whole trajectory in so many different ways of the West. And that this is an organizational structure that's connected to Sufism and who has a similar goal and agenda. Now, those are different bloodlines. And we should also understand then that there will be Mahdis, as they call them in
Yeah.
Islam, one Sunni, one Shia. Who
Well,
knows? There might be a Sufi one as well. And they're going to do battle in the end time. One of the things that most people don't realize is that not only were they the most powerful military organization, the most powerful financial organization, but they were provided in a series of papal bulls additional powers and autonomy to the point where Pope Gregory, he passed a bull that didn't permit any oversight of the Knights Templar by any bishops within the Roman Church, and that they were able to um, appoint their own priests. They had their own religion within the religion and were given the power to do so by the popes. And they
wow.
were a complete law unto themselves. And so they were doing all sorts of different things in terms of intrigue um, that was not sitting well with the church or with a number of the kings. But you could make a long list as to why you would want to get rid of them, but they were so powerful. So you you had to have one of the more powerful kings along with the Pope to get together to be able to bring them down, but they still didn't make them completely disappear. That's how powerful they were. And they're that powerful
Yeah.
because they're all bloodlines. So they come with power. And unless, and so, even when the Jesuits were dismantled in the 1800s, they found protection in Prussia and in Eastern Europe. And I mean, the early 1800s when they were taken down, and they were easily reassembled in the 1800s with the resurgence of the Mary apparitions, which is really directly connected to the Jesuits as well, from their organization beginnings, because their organization was just underground, awaiting an opportunity to come back. And in this, it was the Pope who was in France, imprisoned by the King of
Yeah.
France, who decides he's going to start bringing back the Templars, the Jesuits, because the New Templars, because he needs protection from the Royals. So there's always this intrigue that's going on throughout our history. And one might expect that they're going to play a role in the end time, and particularly with a modern version as the Jesuits, understanding we have a Jesuit Pope in
Jesuit.
place
Yeah.
today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if and those trunk organizations are the rebuttal to the taking down of the centralized Knights Templars. So Freemasonry is created, and they have a specific agenda that has to do with the army controlling the military and politics. The Illuminati is created to destroy Christianity and work on world government. And they work through the Leviathan reach of the lodges of Freemasonry as it's set up around the world to do so. Then you have the Rosicrucians, which controls all of the literature, the media, and the entertainment, and is the source to the modern versions of polytheism that we saw come downstream in Gnosticism, Theosophy, and New Age, and that they are controlling those and overseeing those other two orders below that are reporting up to the Rosicrucians, up to the Committee of 300, that dominates all of the banking, that dominates so many organizations, whether it's World Bank, whether or not it's the International Monetary Fund, whether or not it's World Trade, whether or not it's the Davos community, on and on and on, is controlled by the Committee of 300 because money is the source of their power. And if people think that Bill Gates or Bezos or Musk are the real wealth, that's a drop in the bucket. And the off the books wealth that is stored in Switzerland is astronomical. We have no idea how large that wealth is. Well, I was trying to do research on it when I was writing book one, and in the early 2000s, I was given some numbers. They're all over the net, but the consistent number range at that time of off the books wealth of the Europeans was 3 to 500 trillion. And so now we're over 20 years later. You can only imagine what that wealth would be. And that's how they stay in power. So they make sure that this world is run through the oligopolies, and they're moving to a more formalized oligopoly for the end time. and it's just part of that organizational structure, but it's the money. And then all of that money and that organization that's in the committee of 300 that report into that, they're reporting up to, the 33 families and the 13 families in the West. But understand, there are other bloodlines around the world, and they have their organizational structures as well.
Yeah, people who say to me that digital currency will take away all of the embezzlement and the ability to control things via printing money, I just laugh because it will make it easier. I mean, it literally goes from having to print paper to just typing in the number.
Yeah, it moves on steroids on how they can manipulate it. And you won't see that digital cryptocurrency come until they get some of the AI technology up to speed, which is why Davos received the instructions that until you get better AI out there, we can't move forward. And they've had a big push on that this year. They need to have control over the daemon algorithms. Because if you combine digital currency, which fits in perfectly with quantum mechanics and quantum computing and AI, you have the ability to decode and crack anything, even in cryptocurrency, from other dimensions. And so you need an advancement of these invisible algorithms that they call daemons, invisible as in the invisible ones that are like to be in the background. The invisible ones are the true invisible ones of the spirit realm who govern
Yeah.
this world from the council of the gods, but they want to be able to control things from behind the algorithms with these streams that their money, their information, their technology can't be cracked by anybody. And so they're still working on all of that before they bring in that digital currency. And they also have the ability to convert that into nothing and bring out all of their gold, because they've got all the gold that's been rounded up over the millennia stored away as well, that they'll just reassert a new type of gold standard when everything collapses.
There sure ain't none in the Federal Reserve or Fort Knox.
Yeah, it went somewhere, didn't it?
Yeah. Now, what is that? I know it's a different subject, but that you were just talking about, the algorithm, the invisible. I can't pronounce the word you use, but I've
Well,
never heard of that.
yeah, it's the Greek word daemon, and
Oh,
it's
so
it's
that's the
the
word for demon.
yeah. And so yeah, it's they do everything in plain sight, but that's the term that they like to use for those invisible algorithms that control the outcomes behind the scenes. And so
Wow.
they need to get more secure and better at that, so that they can absolutely control and manipulate everything and not, suffer some sort of cyber attack themselves. So I know that's probably not the right word at that level of technology, but whatever the word is for that, they're still working on that. So they've tested the cryptocurrency. They like it. They want it. It's not secure enough for the real money in this world. So they'll be working on, as we've seen with the instructions, are working to get that in place. And even when you see, like, Google AI, um, Elon Musk's, and I like Elon Musk a lot, but I'm also very, very careful, because there's white hats and black hats, but they all worship the same pantheon. He's creating AI because he thinks the Google AI is evil and his is going to be good AI. I have to say, even though I like Musk a lot, there's no such thing as good AI.
Yeah, I think he's got a very likable personality for sure, and I don't dislike him or anyone else. And I think he probably has good intentions for the things that he does with things like the counter AI, if you could call it that, but his brain interface technology to try to make humans be able to compete with AI. But regardless of his intentions, like you said, there's no such thing as a good AI, and transhumanism isn't good either. I mean, even if it only led to a Ready Player One type world and there were no end times implications, it still wouldn't be good.
Yeah, yeah. None of it leads to any good outcomes. But we're racing in that direction, and I think it's because of the same motivation that there was to create the nation of Israel, is they want to get things in place for the end time because they want to bring that about.
Absolutely. A lot of people just aren't aware of just how much was done and had to happen for the nation state of Israel to be brought into being. Like World War One was all but over before it really began. Before the Rothschilds blackmailed Europe into the Balfour deal and getting which got America into the war and got it started for real. And it's just there's I don't believe by any means that the the Zionists or the Rothschilds are godly in the sense of being polytheistic, or that they are even trying to do the right thing. But I agree with you to some extent that it is absolutely prophetic. God chooses how prophecy is fulfilled. Man may think that he's controlling things, but God just looks and laughs.
Yep.
And
Yep. And no matter how the spurious forces around the world try, they cannot bring about the end time before the ordained time.
correct.
But there is an ordained time, and they are working to bring it about. And I think it's also one of the confusions that goes into understanding some end time prophecy, particularly with the seal and the trumpet judgments. Those are not brought by God. They're brought by those who run this world, and they're contrived. But they're trying to bring about their dragon Messiah, and they're going to need an Armageddon-like war for his credentials. So we need to understand that the things that happen in this world happen because it's permitted to happen through free choice for a certain period of time. And there is a time that only God knows when Jesus is going to return, even though we're told to watch and understand the seasons. But This world and all the horrible things happening in it has nothing to do with God. He has given us the gift of life. He has given us the opportunity to have our names in the book of life and to choose to continue forever or not, and to have our names left in the book of life or blotted out. Our choice. All the things that have happened that are evil in this world happens through that free choice. And it's not the way God would like to see things played out, but he's greater than free choice. That he's Alpha
Yeah,
Omega. So
absolutely.
so there is a specific time, and I think we are indeed in the fig tree generation, and we need to get very clear-eyed about what happened, what is, and what's going to come, and understand that we're going to get a lot of disinformation, misinformation, propaganda, persecution, um, cancellation, all the things that we see going on. It's only going to get stronger and worse as they bring about this dystopian new world order, the new Atlantis that they say they want to
Yeah.
bring about. But that has to happen. It's going to continue to move forward. We can push it back with, more God worship and more evangelization of people to follow God. But at the end of the day, there's a godless generation that was
Yes.
reserved. There's a fig tree generation that is reserved. There is the days of Noah, which can also be understood as a generation, as you take that back to its Greek and its Hebrew meanings as generation. There is that generation where all of these things that Jesus has predicted will be fulfilled. So it will come.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that the preterists misunderstand when they see Jesus say, this generation, they think, and they use that passage constantly, that he was talking about that specific generation. So when the temple was destroyed, then everything was fulfilled. But it's like you said, he was talking about the fig tree generation,
Yeah,
and
it's right. But they ignore inconvenient passages. And
absolutely,
and the other thing that is really interesting is that even where they're talking about all things are being fulfilled, they're going against what Daniel 9 says, that there's 1 week of years when all vision and prophecy is going to be fulfilled and Jesus comes in to rule. And that week has not happened yet. And it's just amazing that they like to separate that out. And that happens in the end time. The Hebrew word ketz, in Daniel 9:26 used twice. And that when they're talking about this little season that is supposed to last, and I've heard so many different versions of it. And again, people can believe what they want to believe, but you shouldn't have to reinvent what the Bible says, and you should not have to leave out inconvenient passages. So they say this little season is something like, some people say, up to almost 2,000 years, probably starting from the time of the destruction of Jerusalem. Some people say it's only 300 years. They have a different time frame on it because there's no scriptural reference that they're basing it on. And
yeah,
that they say the little season is when Satan has been let out and he's ruling the world again today. And that's why there isn't a memory of anything, except that that's not possible, because when you look at Revelation 20, Jesus and the saints are still ruling in Jerusalem. There's not this rule of Satan that's talked about. He's out to gather an army. And even the Armageddon army takes less than a year to be gathered, which Satan is involved on. So when we look at that word, the little season, they're taking it right out of its context of its meaning.
yeah. I mean, and that comes after Armageddon anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you're right. So many people are believing that we are in the little season
yep,
that's in between the the reign of Christ, and when Satan is finally thrown in the lake of fire for eternity, there's really so much evidence to the contrary just in the scriptures.
Yeah.
Before Jesus was ever crucified, he said that uh, Satan was the god of this world. When he was tempted by Satan, when Satan said, all of these kingdoms, took him up on the high mountain, said, all of these kingdoms have been given unto me, and I can give them to whoever I want. Jesus didn't say, you liar.
Yeah.
He quoted scripture to him.
Yeah, they're Satan's kingdoms until they're not, which is at the
Exactly.
end of the end time, and then he's released, and he's going to try and take his kingdom back. And so this little season, when you take that back to the Greek, that's little as in micros, which literally means small, short, little, and chronos, which means season. And that we get one other application for little season, micros chronos, and that happens in Revelation 6, where they're told the people waiting, the ones with the white robes are waiting before the throne. They're told to wait for a little season. So the biblical application, the furthest you could stretch that is 3.5 years. Season could also be understood as just a season or three months, but it's also could be defined as a period of time, which is why you have micros put there, as in a little season, small season. And in passages in the New Testament where it's a longer period of time, it's not left for granted. And so you get passages as in 20, Matthew 25:19, Acts 8:11, 14:3, 28, and 2 Peter 2:3, where it is a long period or a long chronos. And so it's defined, so it's not able to be expanded, but you have to ignore the other applications. And that word and that's used in Revelation 20 begins with and right after Armageddon, and Antichrist and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire. And it says the word and that's the Greek word kahi. And it's used to define the when, as in the next thing that happens and happens immediately after. It's the same application as tota when Jesus is giving his chronology, which means then, as it's translated. It's the when. And is used throughout all of Revelations so that you know that this is the next thing that is coming, and it happens quickly. And is used throughout Revelation 20 in all of those things. And then this happens, and then this happens. It is sequential, and there isn't this big space. And all you have is he's let out for a little season. And you could, if you wanted to expand it to 3.5 years, I think you could do that. But I think it's probably, and just as it would be time for those saints in the first 3.5 years in Revelation 7 that they're waiting for in Revelation 6. But I think we're looking at probably a year or less. And you have to, like I say, you have to absolutely butcher and mangle scripture to get there. And all that happens is when you challenge preterists and Tartarian preterism and all the other different nuances, is they come out with what I call chase the rabbit arguments. So people should not be caught into that. They never answer your challenge. They just say, what about this and what about that? And that's a Gnostic tactic.
Yeah. One thing is for sure, it does not happen until after Jesus returns, and Jesus absolutely has not returned.
And why would he flee Jerusalem
Yeah, I mean,
When he's
really.
reigning there, just and he let Satan out.
Yeah,
So
I
he's
mean,
not I mean, nothing about it makes sense, but it's crazy how popular the idea is, and it's a shame because this is the type of ways that are going to be used to wedge Christianity and to deceive Christianity. If we can't properly role model, then we're going to do more harm than good when people need us the most.
you are absolutely right. And that's why it's so important to make disciples, not just, you know, share the gospel and someone come to Christ and then be forgotten about, because you better believe the other side, the other team, they don't just uh, win converts and leave them alone. You know, they don't win them and forget about them. And people are interested by it because they have people willing to show them the power in it. And what the sad thing is the true power is in Jesus Christ. The true power is in the believer, the spirit filled believer. Here in North America, the freedom that we have in both Canada and the United States, it is truly more of a hindrance for Christians in the fig tree generation, especially when we get to the Great Tribulation, than it will be for people who are used to living with real tribulation. They have had to go through true persecution. You know, their lives or their well-being or their families' well-being and safety is on the line just because they are associated with Jesus Christ. And there's not many of us, at least not in America, who can say that. Now, I'm sure there is coming a time a lot sooner than a lot of us believe when that will be the case, but it's not here yet. And because it's coming is the reason that I say that the fact that we have been both so very free and so very deceived at the same time, it's made for really the what you see in the Church of Laodicea.
Yep, I agree.
Brother Gary, I want to thank you so much for coming on with us. And I thank you all for joining us. Until next time, God bless each and every one of you.